All right, welcome back. We continue right here with the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. First week for the Penguins in the book. Not what you really expected. Who would have thought? 10-1 at Chicago. First time in 21 years they gave up 10 goals in a game, but then the response was a good one. And Mike Sullivan, maybe his message was delivered. Ron Cook, when you look at that start, they're 1-1-1, but specifically Ryan Reaves and his addition. He was the #1 star. But the question a lot of people are asking, is he going to be the deterrent that the Penguins want him to be?
Well, I didn't see him do much the first two games. He hardly played. What did he play, 6.5 minutes in the opener and then 7.5 in the second game? So I can't exactly call him much of a factor. I know he had a couple fights last night. Got to play a little bit more. I don't know. When he was just with St. Louis, they had more guys, the victims of unnecessary cheap shots where the opponent got suspended. So I don't know how much of a deterrent he had. I'd rather have him play well, contribute on the line. I like Malkin's attitude. I can defend myself. I don't need somebody to defend me.
I think he can play a little bit, Reaves, that is, and he certainly said all the right things about when he got picked up by the Penguins about he needs to be faster, he needs to be a better hockey player, he needs to be just play hockey. Last night, they could have built a bronze statue of him at center ice and canceled the rest of the game after the second fight, and then after him roughing up Hartnell on the boards. People were going crazy. It was obvious he was going to be the first star. But what I'm very sick of is this idea of a deterrent, people constantly using that word. It doesn't exist in the NHL. These people are clinically insane when it comes to on-the-ice behavior. Him punching the crap out of two different people, and he's definitely the toughest guy in the league in a fight. Nobody actually wants a piece of him. It doesn't deter anything. So people just need to level with themselves and say, I like watching my guy punch the other guy from the other team in the head. Because he's not a deterrent. He never will be a deterrent. He's a guilty pleasure for some people unless it turns out that he can actually play some hockey.
Well, I mean, look, I think he's a bad dude. I mean, if you see him in the dressing room, he's the guy, his dad was a football player, his brother was a football player. He would have been a football player except he got hurt, as he said, skating at the end of hockey season one year when he was a kid and stuck to hockey.
He clearly enjoys his work, Will. You can tell. He enjoys his work. He's smiling. He was soaking it in on the Jumbotron last night.
Looks like a linebacker.
I mean,
he was enjoying it immensely.
Chris is right to this point. I mean, I think that anybody will be willing to take a whooping if it means they can run 87 or 71 out of a game, right? I don't think that is you're not so scared of Ryan Reaves coming for you that if you think you can knock out the best player of the game in the game or the second best player, one of the top 5 players in the game, it's going to be worth the 5 minutes and the fists coming to you. I mean, I don't think he's going to be that guy. That being said, I think he is a guy that can provide energy when you need it. And you saw, look what we saw in Chicago on Thursday. They needed some energy. He gave them some energy. And I think if you ask him to fill that role, I think he can do quite well.
A lot of people thought at the time that this was too much of a price to pay to get him. And my take on that was a #1 pick. That's a heavy price. But the Penguins are in a situation where they can pick and choose what they need because they're trying to do something that hasn't been done in quite a long time. So, Ron, based on that and also the development of the #1 pick that was involved in this thing, I mean, the Penguins, to me, if they win another cup, this will be viewed as a great move. If they don't, how will you view it?
Well, I mean, that's it. Great. If a play works, it's a great call. If it doesn't work, it's a stupid call. Yeah, if they win the cup and he has a part of it, it'll be considered a great trade. I didn't really like it at the time. I don't think it's necessary. I'm not a believer that you need that kind of stuff on your team. Then I hear Sullivan the other night say we need to be more physical. Those guys are smarter than me. I didn't like it. I still don't think they need that guy. And again, where was he the first 2 games?
I think that there is a disconnect between how we in the media and some fans who think fighting is unnecessary view a guy like Ryan Reaves, what he provided, say, like last night, versus what he could provide down the road, and how guys deep down in that locker room feel about it. I don't think that maybe they fool themselves into thinking that it deters anything. But I think it could be something as kind of lizard-brained or as elemental as if somebody takes a run at me, I know he's not going to be out there being able to stop that from happening, but I like the fact that the guy taking a run might have to take a few punches to the face. I really believe that if you were able to give Crosby or Malkin or other guys truth serum, they would say, as long as he's not hurting us, I like the fact that he's willing to punch people in the face for taking cheap shots.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's looking for Matt Cook 2.0 here, from this guy. I mean, that being said, Pomp, I mean, the Pens are playing with house money. I mean, they are. And until we need to accept that, okay? No team has won 3 in a row in, 35 years? So if you have to go out and get a big dude and hopefully he works out, I'm not going to – their whole season to me does not depend on what Ryan Reeves does or what some first-round pick in 5 years is going to do. They just traded – how many chances did they give Derek Pouliot, a first-round pick, before? And he's not – obviously he's out of town now. So I don't get worked up over draft picks. I mean, they get kids from college that play right away. The Penguins, they've earned the right to kind of experiment, and they've earned the right to lose 10-1 every once in a while. I mean, it sort of gets the message across that you're maybe not as hot stuff as you thought you were. I mean, it's Ryan Reeves. I'm not going to turn him into, a guy that's didn't make the cut on Slapshot.
Well, I like the fact that they're doing something they felt they need to try to win again, and that's always something that I will agree with. Real quick, guys, I have about a minute about Antti Niemi. First game, some of those goals, no goaltender was going to stop. I mean, Patrick Kane, that pass to Ryan Hartman was just ridiculous. But Ron, how do you sit on the goaltender situation?
Well, I can't judge a guy based on 10 minutes.
Would you have put him back in the game?
When he had no help? No, I had no problem with that. When he had no help in front of him whatsoever. Now, he's coming off a bad year. Maybe he's going to be bad. I think if something happens to Murray, they go right to Tristan Jarry, though. They think he's ready, but they just don't want him up here, playing sporadically behind Murray. So I'm not going to judge Niemi on one game. They all stunk that day, including Murray, including all the other players.
Right. The scary part for me, though, was when Murray looked like he almost tweaked his leg in the second period there on one of the saves. It's not worth keeping him. To me, it's not worth keeping him out there in a third period of a game you're going to lose. Let Niemi go back in and take your lumps.
I mean, you can't prevent it just because he almost tweaked his leg.
Yeah,
I don't think
it's a reason. You can get
hurt at any time, and Murray's a big boy. He can handle that kind of situation.
Niemi
at 34 years old, coming off an .892 save percentage year, I think it's fair to wonder about confidence for him and about coming off that bad of a year to get bombed like he did in that first period. I think it's good to keep him away from that because it's very much an open question as to whether or not he can actually be an NHL-level goaltender being in his mid-30s.
Just to make sure, this is the same group that thinks when the Steelers are up by X amount of points with 5 minutes left, they should pull everybody, right? I just want to make sure. This is the same guys, right? I mean, I hear you guys talk about that all the time.
I mean, I think hockey's a lot
different.
Now
you're saying don't live in fear of injury.
What does that have to do with anything? I don't get that.
I'm saying if you're talking about you shouldn't worry about Murray getting hurt in a meaningless game, but you guys also when you talk about the Steelers, anytime they get up by more than 10 points with 2 minutes left, get Ben out, get AB out. I'm just looking for some consistency.
All right, we're due for a break here. Interesting discussion here. Penguins will be next in action. Interesting month for them. They have Washington and Tampa Bay back-to-back, and Ovechkin's off to a great start. Watch out for the Caps. They don't have the target on them this year. They could be the team that may sneak up and like this situation. Yeah. Who knows? Before we go in this segment, it's time for our Armina Stone Smooth Moves of the Week. Brought to you by the largest supplier of the smoothest granite, marble, and quartz countertops you're going to find. So, Chris Mueller, start with you. Your smooth move of the week.
And I got to give it to Leonard Fournette. He was channeling WWE circa 1999 with The Rock. Just bring it to Mike Mitchell, and he brought it, and Mike Mitchell got the boom lowered on him. Not smooth move. Mike Mitchell jumping up in a game his team is losing after the guy got like 13 yards, acting like he did anything good. Sit back down. You didn't do anything.
Ron?
The aforementioned Matt Murray, after giving up, 5 in the first game, 6 in the second, comes back and pitches a shutout last night.
I'll go with Fournette for a different reason. That first touchdown today, I mean, guys at 240 pounds aren't supposed to jump 15 feet, 6 feet in the air like that and score a touchdown. That was incredible.
My smooth move goes to the color commentator on a college football game yesterday. They missed a field goal by 15 yards to the right, and he made it sound like they had just won the game.
Hit the crossbar.
Hit the crossbar. I don't know what he was looking at. That's our smooth move of the week, brought to you by Armina Stone. This is the supplier you want to go to when you need work. Armina Stone features Pittsburgh's largest indoor gallery of granite, marble countertops imported from all over the world to give you the smoothest countertops in the area. Score a touchdown with new granite countertops from Armina Stone. We'll be right back.